My name is Mal Perkins. I attended Oswin Avenue between the years of 1948 and 1952. But I went to Woodfield School first. The Woodfield School were okay because it were near, and like a few people who've spoken before, I experienced the bombing. I didn't experience the bombing by actually being on the site where the bombing took place, but I was very near on Woodfield Road. We never went into the shelter, we went into the coal house, into the pantry, underneath the pantry shelf. My mum, my two brothers, the dog, and the canary. We sat there until my mum thought it was quite safe to come out. We never used the shelter at all. It was an Anderson shelter, we never used it. It was always wet, always damp. And that's the only experience I can have. What would I be in 1941? I'd be 4-year-old. So I was very unaware only that there was something happening. But during my early years, like a lot more of my peers, we played on the bomb buildings, as we call them. You know, adventures and finding things out. I found a Belgian pistol, police pistol, and I gave it to one of my mates and never saw it again. When I was a young 9-year-old, my father died. I feel that my time at school was a very hard time. I was coping with the situation at home, I was coping with the situation at school, and I must say that care was not a priority for education then. I would imagine I was in company with a lot more children in that situation, and a lot of children who came from disturbed backgrounds. Then through Woodfield School, I was slowly losing track of ability. I've always been an avid reader. I've read since I was 7-year-old. But because I wouldn't wear my glasses, and it came to board work with mathematics, I slowly started losing my pace. And by the time I got to Oswin Avenue, till I'm a year old, I'd more or less given up. Failed 11 plus, and went into a B class initially at Oswin Avenue. Mr. Orty, I think, was the teacher. And then I graduated back into a C class, and it was a female teacher, I can't remember her name, which was very, very compassionate. She had a lovely sense of what was needed for children at that level. But I was a reader and quite a bright boy, if I say so myself, along with a few more who were in my situation. Because of the maths, there were a lot of kids in there who really should have had a bit more support. But we got on okay. When I went to Oswin Avenue, I went with two of my peers who would play together and fought together and just about backed each other up all the time. I'll mention names because they're both gone now. One was Bob Duncan and the other one was Roy Warrinder. Sadly, they're both gone. And when we got to Oswin Avenue, the first thing is you start to sort out the cock of the form, because they came from King Edward's, they came from Waverley and Woodfield. I don't know about any more schools, but I think that's where they came from. Oh, Exthorpe School, Exthorpe Middle School. And it's the cocks sorted out just about that time. Fortunately, Bob Duncan was a very good knocker over. He was very shy, but he was quite good at knocking people over. So he established himself. And as we were his peers, his friends, we established ourselves. It was a consequence of going to school. You were either okay or you're picked on. That was the situation. So as I say, I gravitated down into a C class. And once I was in a C class, I felt comfortable. I felt that I could float through my school years. No thought of aspirations, because in my family, it wasn't a factor. Just being okay and comfortable was the factor in our family. I was fortunate with my mum, everything went 4 ways. She was unselfish, salvationist, good woman. And then the first year was Mr. Mason, who was very, very distant. Very, very distant. Like Bob and I think we had our first sample of the cane about third day in. We went to Exthorpe Flats and were late back. And the prefects whipped us into the headmaster's office. And it's hand out and one on each hand. And then it became more or less a merit. If you could take the cane, if you could handle the cane. You know, I'm not saying you didn't cry, I'm not saying it didn't affect, but the most important thing is that you didn't let it show. You know, you do silly things like rubbing your hands and saying it's all right, don't matter, while you're gritting your teeth. And then the second year, Mr. T. Taylor came as headmaster, and he changed the ethos. It felt as if he was adventurous, he was progressive. Mr. Anderson was still there, Dixon was there, Bedlington, the metalwork guy was there. I can't remember the woodwork teacher. Now I went to the metalwork class, and it was chaos. It just chaos. The poor guy had no more strength. He just wanted a quiet life. I think he'd come through the war, or he's come through the First World War, one or the other. But it was just like 2 or 3, just passing the time. Everybody was a bit in awe of Mr. Dixon. He had this very imposing presence. You would be frightened even if he looked at you. I never got the cane off him. He did technical drawing for me. That's what it was, which I weren't bad at. So I like drawing. But I did quite a bit of absenteeism. I was truant quite often, reflectively, that a lot of the teachers didn't want to be there. They'd either done the share or they'd served the country, and as the situation of lost teachers and teachers have been killed. But we'll go up to Mr. Taylor, because he changed it as far as I was concerned. The system changed. The system, what called setting, was introduced, whereby you were put into a situation at your year where people felt you either succeeded or were failing. And then I was with R.J. Anderson in maths, who was a Scots guy, and he was firm, but he was very supportive. He didn't expect anything more than what he was presented with, and he worked at it. That's my view. So slowly but surely I stopped being in trouble. We had a bulb show, which was everybody were involved and proud, growing their hyacinths. And that's the first time, like myself and a lot more, got put in front of a camera. The most important event of my time at Oswin Avenue was a trip to the Festival of Britain in 1951. We went to Islington, stayed in a school hall overnight, and the next morning we were woke by a Boys Brigade band playing in the hall, in the yard. And then we went to the Festival of Britain. We all wanted to go over the river to the Battersea Park, but we were stopped. We got as far as the gate. We're going out the gates again. A few of us, 6 or 7. But the Festival of Britain was good, and I saw the most important thing for me was the drop tower, which is an ancient thing that had been there years. And I was fascinated at the idea that musket balls were made by being dropped about 15 foot, a piece of lead, and dropped into water and creating a round ball. I can remember Klaus Futcher's exhibition. I think he went South Pole or on the North Pole, and there were other things. And Henry Moore's woman, that was there. I can remember that significantly. But we had a good day, and the teachers let us roam, just, they collected us together. And then back to Islington, again, a nice meal. I mean, that was quite significant to some of us, a nice meal. I fed well at home, but school meals, that's what I brought up on. And then we came back to Doncaster, and then back to school, back to the tradition. We're talking about school meals, and we used to go to a building over the road. The system was that children were on benefit, as it was called then. You had I think it was a white ticket, and I think the regular tickets were yellow. I can say I listen to this conversation now about people feeling singled out, particularly. But I can honestly say that to my peers group, we never felt any stigma. We were just pleased to get the meal. A lovely, and the dinners to our belief were okay. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate, but sustaining and okay. And I think a lot of kids, as I said, without labouring the point, I was quite comfortable in my family circumstances. And I think a lot of kids, like lots of times, even now, that was probably the main meal. That was the one they could rely on, get the food. It was rationing. It was rationing. And if your mum and dad smoked and drank, mind you, that would suffer. That would cause a loss in the family's table. Fortunately, I come from a sober background. My generation, and maybe a few years previous to me, took things as they were. I think the idea is that unless you went to technical school or grammar school, you were given 2 or 3 choices: building work, mines, forces, factory work. This is how this is how you thought things were going to be. So I didn't have a bad time at Oswin Avenue. I think I should have tried harder in some ways, but that's another story.
If you would like to know more about the Ossie Through the Ages project, then please email me at tonyarmstrong1959@outlook.com. Thank you.